Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Now then, if you're new to this channel, this is Neil Pickup's Supernatural Strength channel. As you're probably aware if you are a regular on the channel, the man that is literally one of the strongest arm wrestlers of his generation has joined me for tonight's show. And his name is Toddzilla, Todd Hutchings. Todd, welcome to the show, mate. How you doing?
Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Mate, popular demand. That's what this is. Popular demand. Yeah. A lot of people really keen to see you on here, Todd. And understandably so. Obviously, you're an impressive character. And you're a guy that's picked up a hell of a fan base from your displays on the arm wrestling table over what's turned into a pretty decorated career, mate. And a lot of people have become more familiar with you when you've emerged in the W.A.L. Although we've seen your prominence in other leagues prior to that and other major events prior to that. You may have caught some of the earlier shows, Todd. What I want to do is take it way back. I want to understand a little bit more initially.
My story doesn't go that far back.
Come on. There's no way you've grown those eyebrows in a couple of years, son. They've been going for a while now.
Well, I didn't start arm wrestling until when everybody else was retiring. So.
Well, let's go way before that, mate. I mean, you're known as your prowess in the sport. Whilst you're a deep-thinking puller, a very intelligent arm wrestler, and you really think about what you're doing, one of your biggest advantages is that you are strong as FC UK. So let's get really. When did you first take an interest in strength? When did you become aware that you weren't cut from the normal cloth, mate? When you were at school, did you know at that point that you were stronger than the other kids?
No, actually in school I wasn't. I wrestled. I wrestled in high school, but I wasn't one of the stronger kids. I had, I guess, endurance or the ability to, maybe not endurance, but to keep going, to wrestle until I was sick. You know, I've thrown up after matches, that sort of stuff. But I wasn't a particularly stellar arm wrestler, and I wasn't a particularly stellar. Not arm wrestler. I wasn't a particularly stellar high school wrestler or the ability to run or anything like that. But I guess the ability to just bite your tongue and grit it out will sometimes, get you a win over a better opponent if you can win the attrition,
Yeah. What was wrestling your first sporting pursuit, mate? Was that the thing you got into first all as a kid? And at what age was that?
Freshman year in high school. So what's that? 15, 16 years old.
Mm-hmm. What about your family, mate? Your dad interested in strength? Other members of your family?
No. Dad was into gymnastics and stuff, agility type things.
Yeah.
And I don't know about my mom. My mom is one of 13 brothers and sisters growing up on a farm. So farming is physical strength. Back in that
absolutely. Age. Without a shadow of a doubt, mate. So, why strength sports then? What led you to arm wrestling? How did that come about?
I got into arm wrestling as a lark just because they're having one near my hometown. I didn't get interested in actually developing strength and studying strength sports until I was in arm wrestling for about a year or so. So, I got interested in getting stronger after arm wrestling, not before.
That is really interesting. And you're saying that you don't believe that you were any stronger than the average guy on the street when you first got into this?
I don't think so. I mean, I didn't.
Wow.
I wasn't particularly. I mean, I was a junior varsity wrestler up until maybe my senior year, and that was only because if there was an opening in a weight class, I'd gladly go into that weight class. So I don't even know if I earned a spot on the varsity wrestling team. I think I just filled in a blank.
That's genuinely fascinating, mate. Genuinely fascinated. I would have put my house on that you were naturally strong. In fact, I'm not having that. I want to explore things a little bit. Okay. When you started to get into strength sports and you started to do your average gym lifts, I mean, is that how you progressed? Did you go into just looking at, when you say obviously the pursuit of strength came when you got into arm wrestling? Did you go right away to specifics? Were you going straight into the sort of lifts which carried over or you felt would carry over, or movements which would carry over? Or were you going down that traditional, I'm going to do my 3 disciplines of strength. I'm going to go squat, press, dead, and I'm going to see where I can get to. What was your approach, mate?
When I started arm wrestling, there was the Northeast message board.
Yep.
And then there was there was the AAA message board, then the Northeast message board. And then there was this thing that, it was John Brezink would answer questions. I forgot the name of the guy who was running at the time. I know the name, but I just don't want to say it wrong. But, so I printed off that whole website, the Ask John Brezink website, printed the whole thing off and sorted it into piles. There was piles of, hi, how you doing? Are you going to this tournament? Stuff I wasn't interested in. Then there was everything John ever said on training.
Yeah.
And then there was the AAA message board and back then there was a lot of, you do gripper stuff, you do Chris curls, you do that machine. It's like a two-handed gripper machine with the plates on it.
Like the old Iron Mind gripper, you mean?
Yeah.
Sure.
And everybody was doing that. And then I moved to South Carolina. And I got into a very good powerlifting gym owned by a guy named Mark Bartley. And he's the one who introduced me to the West Side barbell system. But it was when I was talking to him about actually progressing, getting stronger, when I realized that as good as John's training was, and I was training with Chad Silvers back then, and, Cobra Rhodes was famous all through Michigan where I started. But you can't adopt their training programs and then start 10 years after them and ever hope to catch up to them. You know what I mean? And so I needed a shortcut. I needed to get in front of these guys in a hurry. And I had like a 4 or 5 year goal. I wanted to win the state championship where I was growing up. That's all so I didn't want to learn every aspect of the sport.
Yeah.
I just wanted to learn how to win that Michigan state championship trophy. That's all I really wanted. And then I moved out of Michigan, so it took years to get there. But, it was in South Carolina at the South Carolina Barbell Club that I was introduced to the West Side barbell system, how to actually measure straight. And then I took the West Side barbell system's basically bench press program and applied it to what they now call side pressure, but where you kneel against the lat row machine, the seated row machine. You just go sideways with it. So I had a speed day, a max day. I was doing bands, I was doing chains, all that stuff before other arm wrestlers were, and it worked out well.
And when you first started to apply these principles into the movements that you were looking at, Todd, did you find that, first of all, I want to explore this side pressure thing and how you arrived at side pressure above all else. Was that because when you actually did that movement, it felt better to you? It felt more natural to you? Because I know from my experience in all kinds of, all kinds of lifting and so on, you tend to gravitate to something if you're good at it. You know what I mean? If you get on somewhere and you even in fight sports, in my background, if you happen to be able to throw an uppercut really good or a right cross really good, you'd find, okay, that's my shot, and you'd stick with that. It was always that shot. It was there for you. You didn't have to chase it. Similar in strength sports, in some respects, you'll find a discipline, a form of lifting that you're really good at, and you'll tend to be, let's train bench today, let's train, you'll always go there. Was that how you found it? Did you have that ace?
No, because I didn't even understand powerlifting at the time, and I understood what arm wrestlers are doing, but back then, all the advice I got was usually this huge amount of volume stuff. 50 wrist curls and lots of bicep work. And I didn't understand arm wrestling either. I mean, I once put a question on the AAA message board. I didn't know the difference between a hook and a press because I'd heard people talking about it. So I put that question on the message board and nobody would answer it. They must have thought I was a retard. So nobody ever told me what it was.
Okay.
And I'm arm wrestling when you first start out, like most beginners do. I'm also with a bunch of people in their first year of arm wrestling. So we're sitting at a table and we're going, well, I heard this. But all arm wrestling, winning is always moving your arm sideways, standing perpendicular. And to me, nothing these bodybuilders were doing, bench pressing, bicep curling, shoulder work, none of it mimicked the actual motion of arm wrestling. So I said, well, that's what I want to get stronger at, is just pushing pushing sideways, you know. So that's where I started there. And then that, you know, then as you learn different top rolls and hooks and that kind of stuff, you get to change it. But to me, it was always trying to, because in arm wrestling, it always hurt my elbow and it always hurt my shoulders. So I wanted to train the movement. I wasn't simulating arm wrestling, but I didn't want to approximate it. You know, baseball pitchers train a lot by throwing things.
Yep.
Arm wrestling's the one sport where most training doesn't look anything like the sport you're doing. You know, 50 wrist curls might make your wrist stronger, but really in a match, you're kind of holding your wrist fairly flat most of the time, you know, because the other guy's curling his wrist. So a lot of that stuff didn't make a lot of sense to me because I wasn't surrounded by experienced arm wrestlers when I started out anyways, you know. Yep. So I guess I kind of fell into it, but the West Side system and Mark Bartley in general, there was a definitive empirical way of measuring how strong you were.
Yeah.
Right? If you add 2 pounds to a set of 50, I don't really know if you're stronger. I know you can lift 2 pounds more 50 times, but I don't know if you're actually able to push more once, where that system everything's based around how freaking strong you are. And I go, okay, because I don't have I'm 35 years old. I figure I got 3 or 4 years to win my championship.
Yep.
And I got to get out, you know. So I don't have, you know, I'm taking advice from people that have been in the sport 15 or 20 years. Like, I don't have 15 years, you know.
Yep.
Turns out I did, but at the time I didn't think I did.
Sure. But like you say, you probably did because of the success you've got. And it's fair to say you've probably taken lesser damage on your joints and all the sort of fundamental areas within your arm, your shoulder, your wrist, because of the fact that you were often stronger than 90% of your opponents. You have best-in-class power. There's no doubt about that, you know. So, when you started to do the lifts, Todd, what kind of weight were you working with?
Well, the side pressure type stuff, you know, it was always a pin stack machine. I got up to 100 pounds on it pretty quick, but my bench press, I've never benched 400 pounds in my life. I was able to deadlift. I've deadlifted in the mid 4s a couple of times, but I can deadlift, you know, on the Olympic bar and the 3-inch powerlifting bar. I can deadlift the same amount. So,
yeah.
And that's what impressed the powerlifters was, wow, he got some decent hands on him. Because usually that fat bar lowers your deadlift.
Sure.
But now my mid 400 pound deadlifts, you know, they got girls doing that. You know, none of my big lifts are impressive to true true strength people, you know.
But in the side pressure plane, you obviously progressed, like you say. You were doing sort of 50 kilos or 100 pounds pretty quickly, which is that's a pretty decent side pressure.
Yeah, it probably took me within a year or so. I was consistently doing over 100 pounds, various, you know, pulleys, different handles. I've been over 150 a few times with the 3-inch wrist wrench.
And when you're doing this, are you keeping your wrist flat, or are you going to supinate and curl, sort of cup your wrist and supinate in? I
start my wrist. All my max effort exercises are no load, so you don't load it up and go back. And the wrist starts fairly flat, but you know, on max effort day, there's no rules. If you cheat, just make sure you cheat every time, because what I'm interested in is pushing up the absolute number, not form limiting yourself.
Yep.
But so I'll set the table up perpendicular, and there's not much you can do if the handle's wide enough. You know, like I said, I'm not trying to simulate an actual match. I'm just trying to work the muscles that are used in an actual match. But there are people, you know, I've seen some Plinkoff just kill my numbers. I mean, there's guys out there that can lift more than that. Whenever I post a video, I get just as many responses from people who are doing more than me as I get people, hey, how do I get to that level? So.
Well, I was going to come to that in one of the later exercises.
Yeah. Just going by my internet messages, I'm average on strength because half the people are stronger than me and half the people want some advice.
I mean, that's the criticism that we'll not get off track, but we'll just, dip in and out of what we're going to talk about. That's something that's been levied at Ryan, isn't it? Because obviously you trained Ryan Bowen, and he's massively complimentary of what that has afforded him, and rightly so. Ryan takes a lot of stick, but the kid's strong as fuck at the moment. He's really strong. So, and he attributes a lot of that to you, and to following religiously what you showed him. Now, Ryan obviously says that in some lifts he has surpassed what you've been able to do, or equaled and surpassed what you've been able to do, and yet he's clearly got nowhere near the caliber of result that you've got. Not even close. I mean, if you look at your, and we'll get back on track a little bit now, if you look at your sort of emergence in the sport, how long into the sport was it for you when you started to have those big wins, those sort of like wow moments where you're showing up at a tournament and people are going, holy, who's that dude?
It took me, after I moved to South Carolina, it took me 3 or 4 years before I beat Chad Silvers the first time.
For those out there that don't know Chad,
yeah,
Chad
and
is
I'm
a
220, and
super
Chad was still like 170, so I outweighed him by a lot. But when I first got down there was a 138-pound guy named Russell Abbott just killing me when I first got down there. So it took 3 years before I beat Chad the first time in practice. I think I beat my first AAA national champion like 2 years into it. I beat a guy named Bucky Russell.
Yeah, no, Bucky, yeah.
On my second year. It took about 5 years to get my first win on Ron Bath. And that was arm wrestling Ron Bath 4 or 5 times a year for about 3 or 4 years. I think I was into it.
It's a pretty short list right there, mate. That can say, oh yeah, I beat Ron Bath.
Well, I think I beat Cleve Dean and Dave Randall my 5th or 6th year in. And I think my 10th or 12th or 13th, 15th year in is when I beat John the first time. So
you're into your 15th year and your first win against John, was that the Ultimate Vegas show?
Yeah.
Yeah, which was a hell of a match.
And that was like 2015, right?
Yeah, I think it was, mate.
I started in 2000, so that's how long it took.
Yeah, let me, I'm trying to work back to when that was. Just make sure my mind, it might have even been slightly before that. I'm trying to think. Yeah. When was that? I need to check my dates on that,
Yeah, I can't remember. All kind of blurs now.
Yeah, I thought it was earlier than that, mate. Because I seem to recall that the Pulling John guys were still around at that time.
They were.
And I know there's Lottie was 2004.
Oh, so it might have been 8 years then against John.
Yeah, I'd have to check those dates. But
it turned out, I mean, once I got onto that West Side barbell system, by about the 2nd or 3rd year, then I was getting a lot of I mean, I was doing really well, and then I became friends with John, so then he afforded me to go overseas and stuff, so I was getting a lot of exposure, and then, the more top caliber guys you pull, the more top caliber guys you lose to, the more you learn. And John really sped things up because he was putting me in front of the world's best people. Yeah. Sometimes you'd sneak one by them, sometimes they'd beat you, but you always got better,
Yeah. I mean, the old adage, isn't it? Iron sharpens iron. And it sounds like it's quite interesting really, because with Chad, you had a guy who was, I'm going to pick my words carefully, he was extremely technical, but he wasn't necessarily the guy that would seek out that close quarters, and get set in a hook match. He was a dancer. He'd try and get around people. He'd try and utilize technique.
He top rolled the shit out of all of us.
Yeah. Now you're not that guy.
No, what had happened was, I still remember the first time, because we were still practicing at Fritz Corey's house, and it was probably my 2nd year down there, 2nd or 3rd year in there, getting beat up. And then at the end, Fritz puts us in the strap, and I was losing to Fritz all the time too. In the strap, all of a sudden it's like, hey, I'm in this match. And I beat Fritz. And Chad and Fritz look at each other and they go, what the hell? Because it was like that unknown. Me and Fritz go again. He goes, Chad, I can't touch him. Chad gets up on the table, we get the strap, and I beat Chad, and I go, motherfucker, man.
Yeah,
the straps is exactly where the sport should be.
Yeah. It allowed you to get that power down, and it's been your friend ever since, hasn't it? You know.
Yeah.
Your ally ever since, mate. But when you sort of discovered that you had that top end advantage in the strap, did you then sort of generate the technique and your strategy around that? Was that something you were looking for all day, every day?
Oh yeah. Then I was just trying to push that up because I figured there's no way. The philosophy was in the strap, even if you lose your hand, losing your hand doesn't lose you the match.
No.
As long as your arm doesn't get pinned, you're still in it. And you know, I can pin somebody without my hand, right? But you taking my hand doesn't win you the match. So I figured that was my shortcut, you know, to get up in level. Now I train my hands a lot more now than I did because it's harder. But, yeah, I kind of thought that was going to be my, you know, that was like me discovering the King's move at the time, was me discovering how Jerry Carteret arm wrestles all the time.
You know what's interesting there, mate? Were you sort of, do you think that developed because of the fact that you were being top rolled by Fritz, by Chad, so often in training? Do you think over years it just sort of evolved and you learnt to almost accidentally pull ugly? Because you're great at pulling ugly. If a match gets into you know, if it's a real thuggery battle, you rarely lose. Yeah. You know, you're really, really good in that dogfight scenario when it is ugly, when it's not clean. So many exceptional arm wrestlers I've seen you later waste when they seemingly had everything. Even lads like, you know, Marcio and...
Yeah. Too many top rollers go, oh, I got his hand, and then think they can rest. And it's like, dude, you got my hand. Nobody called a pin. What the hell?
Yeah. It does signal them for a lot of good pullers if they can't find that comfortable resting spot. Yeah. Did you identify that as an opportunity early, Todd? Was it something that you thought to yourself, you know what, this is? Did you have that sort of affinity with pulling in an ugly position? Did it feel comfortable to you always, or did it feel horrible? And you just evolved?
I didn't. It always hurt, and I never wanted to be in that position. So I tried hard, you know, and people have been coaching me to top roll my whole life. I tried hard not to ever lose my hand, but I just decided that once you lose your hand, just stop, just don't stop, just keep pulling, you know. And I came in, so like in 2000, top rolling became popular, 80s maybe, late 80s?
Yeah.
So then a whole generation of arm wrestlers changed. They'd get hand position. Probably they didn't even talk about hand position in the 70s. They'd get hand position and people go, oh, well, he's got this. So then you got all these people who, that's all they ever trained. And I've arm wrestled in big matches, top rollers, who've taken my hand, and as I'm pushing them to the pad, they're still fighting for hand position. They don't put their shoulder in. They don't get their arm in. They're still trying to fight, you know, hand on hand. It's like, dude, you already got my hand. You know, you better stop your arm from going down.
Do you think that they can, Todd? Do you think that if they came in to match you on power, they'd have any chance? Because I have seen guys try that with you and just go, you know, I remember Tokarev famously, you know, trying to readjust and come in and just, he had that goldfish moment, that like, you know, holy, like, whoa.
Well, that was surprising because he had beat me earlier at Zloty. He beat me pretty easily. So then when I came back, not all beat up, he probably thought it was going to be a lot easier. So that was probably more of him underestimating me at the time.
Okay.
You know, because when we first met, it's in that overall at the Zloty. And towards the end of that overall, there's no rest. You know, you're up there. Yeah. You're up there against the world's best people. and
constantly.
Back, you know.
Murderous row.
Come off a hard battle. And I can't remember who it was. It was some Russian. And then I go up to Tokarev, and it's like, he actually grabbed my hand. He took his hand and bent it backwards. I couldn't even close my fingers, and he just pushed me down. You know, so then when I pulled him in Russia, I beat him and his brother in Russia that one day. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, he's just another one of the sort of massive names that you've managed to side through over the years. Let's get back to sort of those early encounters, mate. When you started to, for example, when you had your first win over Ron Bath, if we take it sort of chronologically, was he the first really massive name that you beat? Do you think, Bath?
Yes, I would have been happy quitting after beating Ron Bath. And it was a tournament. It was a tournament in Florida. Imagine this: an arm wrestling tournament starts late and then runs late. You know, our finals. I think the tournament started at like they both do, like in the afternoon, somewhere between 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock. It's after midnight. My wife and my two
like over the top.
Yeah, they went back to the hotel hours ago, and it's so late. It is after midnight, and we're arm wrestling. I've got a pitcher of beer on my table. I'm just sitting there. I don't even really care. Me and Ron, the prizes were ill-defined. There wasn't money. It was prizes. And I think the choice was like a folding chair or a beach umbrella or like a set of can cozies or something. So Ron's not really into it. Me, all I want is to beat Ron, you know, and we had a match and grips and fouls went back and forth, but he top rolled me like he always did. But instead of taking my hand, I think I followed with him, and I was able to get a hook set and drag him back. So then he had to come up to the losers bracket. So then it's hours again later, and I think I was able to get a hook into him the second time, and that was a turning point for me. And this was right before Gary Roberts and Arm TV came around. So when he heard that, then Gary Roberts goes, you know, so now Gary Roberts is calling me a lot. And I mean, he loved me. There's probably weeks worth of footage of me on Arm TV, you know.
But you were
the best, the first world-class puller I've ever beat, you know, legitimately.
What was the reaction straight off the back of that, mate? I bet that must have changed the perception of everybody when you go to a tournament. You're a guy that's beaten Ron, suddenly you're on everybody's radar.
Well, it would have been, but since it's like 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I think only 4 people saw it, and one of them was Ron's wife, you know. And what had happened was, and this has happened almost all the time, after that, me and Ron became like really good friends, and he started coming to South Carolina and training with me and Chad Silvers and then in South Carolina. So now I beat, you know, then we got into practice, you know, and I couldn't touch him again for a long time. But now I'm practicing with Ron Bath. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah.
You know?
So you're training with Ron now again?
Not now. I was back then.
Okay. Yeah. So how far is that from? Because Ron's in Canton, Georgia.
Yeah, he's in Georgia. He's probably 10-hour drive from here.
Jesus. Yeah, commitment on a new level.
Yeah. But the same thing happened to Dave Randall. When I beat Dave Randall the first time, he started coming to South Carolina to train with us. Mm-hmm. And he's also from Georgia, Stone Mountain, Georgia at the time.
That's a big boy as well.
And when I beat Bucky Russell at Rick Layton's tournament, all of a sudden he started coming to practice. So I beat like a really good guy. And then our whole practice team went up a whole level because these good guys would come and practice with us.
So when you went into the Ultimate Las Vegas event to pull John for the first time in that 90-kilo class, in your mind, did you feel like you could do it that day? Did you feel like you'd already got to a level that you could beat John?
This is an honest-to-God true story that I'm about to tell you. And you can ask Allison, you can ask Michael Gould, and you'd have to ask his wife at the time. Mm-hmm. They came into our hotel room, like asking to borrow a scale. And Mike, you know, and I was still new enough and unknown.
Mike, ordering a scale.
Allie on the way in there, I go, I feel good. The strength's been coming up. I've been arm wrestling some really good people. Mm-hmm. And Mike Gould asked, he goes, well, how you feeling? And Allie told him, he goes, Todd's feeling pretty good, you know. And then I got into that tournament. Me and John pulled like that. Mike Gould came back and he goes to Allie. He goes, when you said he felt good, you didn't mean that good.
Good, yeah.
But I felt good going into that tournament. My weight was spot on, and I was feeling strong. Yeah. And
had you had any prior experience with John at that point?
First time.
Whoa.
And he was, I'd met him at the Harley Pull. I competed at a Harley Pull tournament, and I met him there. But I went out, I arm wrestled Kenny Hughes, a Canadian, and Cobra Rhodes, and then I was out. I lost to Cobra Rhodes and Kenny Hughes, bam, bam, so I never pulled anybody. But I got pictures of John holding my my kid wearing diapers.
Pretty
and
cool.
I Dave Patton that day, too.
Yeah, Dave
Patton was at that tournament.
Wow. Whatever happened to Dave? Unbelievable. But when you obviously first latched onto John in that initial matchup and he couldn't shift you at the base.
But he came inside too much.
Were you surprised? Yeah, but John didn't mind pulling the hook. He'd often go there, you know. Did you feel like
nobody pulls me inside now though?
Yeah, it's like that's. Did you feel like you had more than him in the hook? Did you feel like
the first match? I was nervous and scared, so I really don't know what happened. But on our second start, he dove straight in, came across the table, landed right in my arm, and I go, "Holy! There's no way I am losing from this." You know what I'm saying? Look, bam.
Perfect.
And I knew I had power. That's when I got over. Then he started pronating out on my hand, and I was too stupid to know what was going on. But wrist to wrist that day, I could. Now John pulled 2 weight classes. I'm not saying I was better than him and anything, but at that particular day, wrist to wrist, I felt stronger than John. Now John went and beat me like the next 15 matches or so because we ran into each other a lot after that. But that was enough that made me famous. You know what I mean? That got me my own channel on Arm TV.
I'm gonna be honest. I used to, myself and John used to room a lot when we'd go to the big tournaments in Poland and so on, and he never shut up about you at that time. And even after that, when you guys were training together and so on, he would be singing your praises, and we'd be talking about different pullers. You know, I remember he pulled Dima Kotchev when Dima was really severe. You know, he was kicking everybody's head in, and we were over there, came off, and I said, "How was it?" And he said, honestly, Todd would rip him open. He's like, yeah, Todd would just pull him right out of that and slam him in a hook. So he was full of praise for you. And he was telling everybody that would listen. So you obviously made a lasting impression in terms of where your power was at there. And sort of as you go through the sport, I think that everybody gets categorized in one area, you know. You always be, that guy was a great arm wrestler. That guy was fast. That guy was... It's got to feel good in a sport that's defined by strength when everybody says, that the fluffer is the strongest.
I do like that. I won't lie. I like
you
that
got
a
it,
lot.
yeah. That's good, isn't it? That's like being known for having the biggest floppy dog. It's just like one of those things you straight away, shall we get some T-shirts printed?
Well, what's funny is now I think people overestimate my strength and just underestimate my intelligence, you know, because I can tell when they interview me before matches. It's like, well, dude, I can watch the same videos you watch. I'm not an idiot, you know. But yeah, I think, but they do tend to, at this point, people actually think I'm stronger than what I actually am, you know. But
that's something you're gonna have to talk a lot of people into, me included. When you do tend to do very, very well when it comes down to that grunt match. I mean, let's be honest, the fact that you were able to... What's your biggest weight that we've seen you pull in the World Arm Wrestling League? What's your heaviest we've seen you?
Now, when you weigh in super heavyweight at W.A.L, you're fully dressed, and right after... And I tracked my weight, and the heaviest I ever got was going in against... It was either Devin Lorette or Matt Mask, and they're kind of the same. I've never been over 238 pounds in my life.
Okay. So
and one of the biggest I've ever, it was one of those guys. It was either Devin or Matt. I was 238, and the other one I was like 230. I was trying to get to 240. I was trying really hard, and I would get up into the 235s, 238, and the weekend would come, and if I'd skip a meal or something, you know, I'd lose 7-8 pounds, which is just 7 or 8 pounds of undigested food I'm carrying around. You obviously can't lose 7 pounds of real tissue. But, yeah, in order to get to 238, you know, I'm just force feeding all the time. But I've never been heavier than 238, and I wanted to get over 240 ever since the W.A.L put me into super heavyweight.
Now, for a man who weighs let's say you did weigh 240, for a man who weighs under 242, to go up and pull in power matches against super heavyweights who are known for power, guys like Jerry, people like, to dominate on strength, explosive top rollers, giant men like Matt Mask, beat people who are as complete in all areas, whether it be strength, whether it be technique, whether it be explosivity, as Marcio Barboza. That, whatever way you cut it, that spells really strong. You must be, I know you're a modest bloke, mate, but you must come away. If I'd done that, however modest you are, just after I'd set up my stall and started selling the mugs and hats, I would basically think to myself, yeah, I'm pretty fucking strong. If I can do that, I remember one of the defining moments that I recall watching you compete, mate, was actually the NAL against when you were doing the countdown with Marcio.
Oh.
Because you were in not the best of positions, but the grunt to the side, the just raw tenacity that you spoke about back in your sort of high school wrestling career was clear to be seen there. You weren't letting that go. And the amount of effort that you forced out of Marcio that day was truly ridiculous. And if you looked at that on anybody's sort of paper, from a technical perspective, he had the better of the positions from start to finish in every single match, and yet you stayed in there and made it a dogfight. What was most interesting about that was speaking to you a couple of minutes after, and you explaining to me how you did up. You were like disappointed that I should have won. You're like gutted. Everybody else was like, she did really well there. That was really impressive, mate. And you're like, oh God, I can't believe I lost that. Should have won that from there. You were a bit, how do you go about sort of getting your head round that at that time? You must have been happy with the results in many ways, because that represented probably your biggest match to date, I'm going to say. I can't, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't recall you pulling a more elite level super match than that at that time.
No. And at the time, that match was even more important, because in that, remember, that was where the champion was going to get money every month and just had to defend. Yep. So the winner of me and Marcio was going to pull for the championship, so that was a prelim. But losing to Marcio, then you go into the Never Never Land. Mm. And to be honest, I was new enough in the sport. I probably didn't respect anybody because I didn't know anybody. You know what I mean? So,
when you say you didn't know anybody, did you not study these guys? Did you watch them at all? Because at that time there was some footage out there of the top.
There was some, but it was VHS and everything else. And, and not like today. What the people got today with the internet is double-edged. There's a lot of stuff out there which can help them, but there's also a whole lot of stuff out there which will just hurt them and destroy them, So back then, there wasn't, I saw him on the David Letterman show. I think that was before I arm wrestled him. But, yeah, I still thought I could have won that. Even though I watched the match now and it was like, oh, there's no way in hell I'm going to win that.
Yeah, you were in some awful positions. But having said that, when you did face Marcio in the World Armwrestling League, a couple of matches there, he had pretty good position on you, and yet you managed to gut it out and win that match.
I'm smarter now.
Yeah.
Because I know what he's going to do.
Yeah. What was your sort of favourite matches from your early career, mate? Are there any that really stand out to you or were defining for you? Are there any matches that you look back more fondly?
That match with John on television was really cool, but probably the funnest I've ever had was, and it doesn't count because they were both at the end of their careers, and I understand it, and I'm 3 or 4 years into mine, but there was a it was a AAA tournament in Jacksonville, Florida, and I beat Cleve Dean and Dave Randall and won that tournament. I won against the three of us. Mm-hmm. It was supposed to be like a round robin, or I forgot what the rules were, but only 3 people signed up, and I got a picture of Dave Randall standing next to me with his arm around me, We're both shaved heads. We both got the Fu Manchus. We're both wearing orange shirts. I mean, it looks like Dave Randall.
Russian doll.
Like a 5/8 scale version of him. And his arm is just resting on, I mean, it's not even up. It's like down like an armrest. And I've probably moved 6 or 7 times since then, and I got that picture on every computer I've ever worked at. So it's even on the one I have at work.
And what weight were you then, mate? What were you
198.
So you were under 198 pounds. You beat Dave Randall, and you beat Cleve Dean.
Yeah. Now I slipped one by Cleve Dean. I think I elbow fouled, but I got him off go, And Cleve, what, it wasn't the young Cleve, but it was still. For me, you know what I'm saying? It's the first time I ever met the man. And he signed my book, and he said a lot of nice things, and we spent a lot of time.
Yeah, that's a remarkable win, mate. I mean, just physically, he was a difficult man to arm wrestle. Just an absolute giant. Lovely dude as well. Very, very, very interesting fella. I could talk to him for hours. He had so many stories about. I remember at the Worlds in Italy. I was speaking to him out there for a long period of time. He was telling me about the old World's Strongest Man stuff, and that was fascinating to listen to. Where he's telling me the stories back in the 70s and that,
This is what's so cool about that, because then Gary Roberts called me. I mean, I was still at the tournament, because I still pulled the 198 tournament afterwards. And Gary Roberts called me during the tournament and interviewed me, because he had heard. And I think John... It wouldn't have been a text. He either left me a message on the message board or an email. But John just sent me, yeah, it's pretty cool beating the big guys. But here's John Brezink talking to me, and I'm 3 or 4 years into the sport. Nobody knows me, you know what I mean? But here I got John talking to me like we're friends or some shit, you know what I mean? And then Dave Randall started practicing with us in South Carolina. So like, the weight of our team went up by 300 pounds just because Dave would come up and practice with us a few times then.
And when Dave did start to come down and Ron started to come down, could you emulate it in training? Could you beat these guys in practice at first?
No, they would come up and you would know, because Dave Randall tried to press in on me. Yep. So right into my hook, and then I could go. In practice, he only top rolled the shit out of me. And then the next couple of Arm TV tournaments, whenever I had to pull Dave Randall, it's that big, tall posting top roll that I still have trouble with. Why? I was having fits with it back then. Ron Bath would do the same thing. Practice top roll against me. I might have beat Ron one more time in the year or so afterwards, but it was Ron hit me on the top roll, and I think I was able to re-grip and just grab his fingers and come back. It was ugly, but you know what they call the guy who wins ugly? The winner.
Yeah, well, that's all you got to do, isn't it? There's no rules on how. Like Mike Tyson never had to be that good a boxer. If the guy was unconscious, you go home with a check. I'm conscious I've kept you on here for quite a while in this first episode, mate, but I want to just finish with one question. When you were sort of, and let's, for the purpose of this, take John Brezink out of it, because I know the type of guy you are, and I know you're going to give me the answer, John Brezink, if I leave that one hanging. So let's take John Brezink out of the equation. At or around that time in North America, in the 198 class, around the time you pulled John at the Ultimate Vegas, were there any other middleweights in the game that you were aware of or came across with any kind of frequency that you thought may be a genuine challenge for you? Or do you think that it's fair to say you were the man at that time outside of Brezink?
Around that time, I'll keep running into Solaris, and those are always, I had fits with, I think I ran about 50% against Mike Solaris. Mm-hmm. Now, just, he was technical enough, he would beat me. And around that time, Chad and Ron and John and all went over to Zloty. So I knew of Babayev at the time, but I couldn't, they came back telling stories about Babayev, and it must have felt like sailors coming back in the 1600s talking about mermaids and sea monsters because you can't believe a little man's that strong, right?
Yeah.
But as far as in North America, yeah, Marcio and Solaris are probably the folks. Well, Kevin Bongard, you know, because he, you know, so there's a lot of those guys that, and a lot of them I hadn't met, but
you had the better of Kevin at that time, didn't you?
When I started arm wrestling him, I hate to say this on video because I'll probably get it wrong, but I don't know if I ever lost to him.
No. I saw you guys pull a number of times, and Kevin is a rock. He's one of my favourite arm wrestlers ever, and a phenomenally gifted puller in all areas. But I think you were a bit of a bogeyman for Kevin from what I saw. I think you were a bit of a bogeyman for most people from what I saw, and hence that question really. I wanted to sort of clarify in my mind where you honestly put yourself at that point. Because the reason for that question, Todd, just to be clear, is to sort of define where your period of dominance probably, as a middleweight, probably started. Because I think a lot of people will see you as a dominant middleweight, you know. And I think there are sort of eras where you've got a guy that is clearly going to be marked as the number one. And I think John's a little bit different because of the fact that he was a bit transient around weights. You know, he'd pop up at 198, but often more like 209, 220, really, was where he tended to hover. And he always told me that he felt more comfortable at that kind of weight, certainly at that time in his career. Latterly, you've had the emergence of RVJ, who's a credible threat. Rob's obviously very, very strong. But it's really understanding where you came on the scene and trying to get a feel for people who are watching the show to understand just how long you've been elite level in North America, because you clearly were at that level as a middleweight when you moved out of that weight division and went in to start pulling the heavyweights. Obviously, we'll come to that in later episodes, mate, but for now, I just want to thank you for taking the time out to join us on the show. I know people are going to absolutely love this. Hopefully you don't mind coming back on and doing some more in this series, mate. Fascinating stuff. I learned a lot about you.
I'm willing to help anytime, Neil. I love doing this.
Top man. Ladies and gents, if you do enjoy the shows, please remember, like, share, subscribe, let everybody know. And on a personal note, hope you and your families are all safe and well. And myself and Todd will see you back on here for another episode really soon. Until that time, guys, take it easy, peeps.